Okay, Bob Mettley, County Controller, Secretary of Retirement Board. I had sent out some recommendations from Korn Ferry to put the retirement fund in a more, I guess, better position going forward in light of some of the events that are going on now. Primarily, they were recommending we go to a new revised life expectancy. It's a new mortality chart that's based on government employees versus general public sector employees, and I think it's more geared and will be consistent with what we're seeing in the county now, people living longer and working longer. They also recommended we change the method of deductions for the assumption to what GASB has, which is more at a weighted rate rather than actual physical dollars. And they also recommended that we look at reducing the return assumption to 7.25% or possibly even 7%. As you can see on the sheet, what the effect of all of them would be if we drop the return assumption. We do everything and drop the return assumption to 7.25%. We'd be roughly at what our we budgeted for the annual determined contribution for this year, and our funded ratio would drop to 81.6%. If we drop to 7%, which is more in line with what it looks like the projections are for all the financial people, it would cost us $3.6 million, which would be an additional roughly $370,000, part of which would come back from the agencies, and drop our funding to 79.8%. If we drop to 7 now, it'll probably keep us from having to look at it again in another year or two and be more costly. But
is this some funding we could recoup from the CARES funding because it was related to COVID?
I have no idea.
No, I don't. This is Jay.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. These are GASB changes, accounting required changes that have come about, and by making the changes, as you may have noticed on the summary that Bob provided, some of the changes require more funding and some are savings, and it all balances out to being able to do to reduce the expected return to 7.25% at essentially at level funding, not making a change to it. You have been for forever, I guess, at a 7.5% expected return of the fund, which right now is fine because your 10-year actual return has been a little over 8%. We've seen obviously 10 years of really above normal stock market returns. Overall, the average is about 7.25% across pension funds nationwide. That is, the industry average is about 7.25%. In speaking with Jay Wanger of Susquehanna Group Advisors, and he's mentioned this conversation, or he's had this conversation with you many times, and his recommendation is to get it down to a lower number, at 7% or below. Obviously, that has a fiscal impact. So in this case, the 7.25% expected return would be neutral, budget neutral. A 7% return would be an extra between $300,000 and $400,000 in the annual required contribution. We're budgeted right now for the $3.2 million, which is a combination of $2.5 million from this year's revenues so far and a carryover of $600,000 that we had from last year's ARC that was lower than expected. So it's really a fiscal decision for you on whether or not you want to reach a little deeper and pick up more of an ARC in exchange for having a lower expected return, which is in the long run probably more realistic. But it's entirely up to the board members, obviously.
Okay. Comments? Commissioners? Or anyone? My feeling is, if there are none, that I'd like to consider going to the 725. I don't really, because of a lot of projects and a lot of other ripples from going to 7, I'd rather take the first step and go to 7.25, keep the ARC neutral for this budget year, and then maybe revisit it in a year or two. But that's my feeling, based on the kind of number of projects and the maybe ripple to our bond rate through our Standard & Poor's rating. You know, all those things are interconnected. So I'd rather not rock the boat too much, you know, with all the things that we have on the stove.
You know, I agree with your end result, but adding in a little bit different logic in that until we're sure that the stock market is stabilized, it might be more prudent to go with 7.25 now and then adjust next year for any difference.
Commissioner Ames, any?
I'm comfortable with 7.25 now, and you need a motion to that effect. And can we include the other two items that Bob's proposing?
Yeah, I think we can do it as we can lump it all together as to take it as the recommendation for the, if you want me to, I can do it.
Okay.
I'll move that we adopt the revised life expectancy recommendation with the new mortality rate, the revised method to account for the member deductions, and lower the investment return assumption to 7.25.
I'll second that motion.
Sally, I didn't want to, have you out of the discussion. Do you have any, comment since before we vote? Do you have any thing you'd like to express? You're muted. Unmute. There you go.
Yeah. No, that would be fine with me also to go to the 7.25 and make the other changes.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this particular motion? If not, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So ordered. Thank you. And Bob, did you have one other issue you wanted to bring forward?
You want to propose direct deposit changes, Bob? I think.
Yes, I would.
If they're not prepared, well, actually, that's not retirement board. We have to go back to the.
That's back to the rare commissioners meeting.
Okay. We will unrecess and reconvene our regular meeting, and we will start with Bob's thoughts about direct
Did we have to make a motion to adjourn the prison board meeting?
Well, prison board.
Make that motion.
Second.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Call for the vote?
All in favor of reconvening, please say aye.
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 Okay.
Yeah, just to tee this up a little bit, if I could, we discovered, not we, obviously payroll has known this for a long time, but several years ago, direct deposit was encouraged but not mandated for employee payroll. And during COVID over the last couple of months, when there were times that the building was closed, but employee paychecks were being distributed, we had to figure out a way for those who were still getting a paper check to receive that, and that caused some coordination with the sheriff's office to get back doors or to mail them out and so on. And discussing this between HR, myself, controller's office, payroll, etc., it just seems that mandating direct deposit is the reasonable thing to do at this point. And I think the controller's office is in agreement with that. I'll go from there. It is an extra effort that they must take on, and there's sometimes some hiccups with the distribution of those. People often want to get their checks a day early, and then they take them to the bank, and the bank won't negotiate because it's dated a day ahead, and those sorts of things we run into often. So, Mr. Mettley, if you want to go from there.
Yeah, what had happened, one of the things that we had to do during the COVID with the people that had still got checks was we had to take them to the back door, and where the deputy sheriffs, when employees would come in, they'd show their identification to get their checks. We just added one more level of activity for them to have to deal with and be responsible for. And I think at this point we're down to about 80 employees that are still on checks. I think it would just be prudent for us to, looking at the first pay in August to become mandatory direct deposit. If at that point in time, the only paper checks that would be issued would be new employees, because it's pre-date, we have to send one payment in to get the account information verified before it goes direct deposit. But we would virtually eliminate the need, and certain contracts like uniform allowances and stuff need to be done on paper checks. We probably do retro payments on paper checks yet, but the need would go down to virtually on a bi-weekly basis. I would say a handful of paper checks from what we're doing now, somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 85 per pay. And it would just be easier for just the same reasons Jamie said. We have people get their checks the day ahead of time. They try to take them to the bank, even though you tell them not, they still do it. This way here it would prevent that. And if there'd ever be a situation like say a snow or something where people couldn't get here, they would be able to get their checks, would be in their account. We've had issues where people didn't show up, we mailed them, they didn't get them until, because we can't control the mail, they may have not got them for 2 or 3 extra days. This would just eliminate all that.
Well, COVID may have brought this more to a head, but those ongoing issues that, are sort of payroll period to payroll period have more credence with me, though we are impacting about 10% of our employee force. Don't know what pushback there'd be on that. If I don't know if other counties are 100%, or do you have any data on that front?
In talking to other counties, most counties are direct deposit. We're one of the few that still issue a majority of checks.
How will
Question. Go ahead, Commissioner.
I was just going to ask, how will these 80 people get the word that they have to submit their bank accounts and things? Will you mail them, or?
We actually have the list of the people that get the checks yet. I will, if this is approved today, I will send them a letter notifying that, along with a direct deposit form for them to get back to us.
And when do you propose that this would take effect? What kind of time do they have to respond?
We're looking at the first pay in August, which would give them the whole month of July to get their information back to us.
That sounds fair.
Commissioner Ames?
Yes, I think this is great. We've talked about it before, and I think it's something that we need to do. I would make one other request, or at least look into, for those of us that are getting direct deposit, and that's almost all of us, we still have the very formal, and I assume rather costly, dummy check. And I'm wondering if we couldn't save some significant money by, having those printed and secured on just a sheet of paper or something like that, rather than that check. I know they have to be provided a stub, but is there any, could we look into that?
That could be looked into. If we did that, we'd still have to run it through, we would probably have to run the paper through folder sealer and put them in an envelope, or get some type, because some of the unions do require that the checks or vouchers come sealed.
Well, let's look at the cost
We can
offset.
look at that.
Yeah.
We'll look at it and see what we can come up with.
Okay.
That's a good point, Bill. Most that have direct deposit will do an email, electronic receipt or whatever. But
Exactly. Yeah.
okay, well, we'll deal with that part of it. But right now we have a motion and a second to go with direct deposit for the balance of our.
I'll make the motion that we go to total direct deposit with a target date of August 1st.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? So moved.
Thank you very much.